Hare Krishna, everyone. Dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, and also one of his most loyal disciples and the senior Sanskritist for years and years, Gopiparanadhana Prabhu, who was on the team that finished the Srimad Bhagavatam for Srila Prabhupada. That puts it in the category of hearing Srila Prabhupada's books. So Brhad Bhagavatamrta it is. Before we read, we hope that you are all happy and safe and well and tolerating the difficulties of this pandemic era that we're in. Srila Sanatana Goswami compiled the Srimad Bhagavatamrta Stotram in order to glorify the Srimad Bhagavatam, which he did marvelously. And it's the basis of all Rasa Shastras, the Bhagavatam, and Sanatana Goswami got the most instructions from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly than any other disciple. He's actually the senior disciple. The older brother of Rupa Goswami, who was most intimate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Sanatana Goswami was senior. And we just read today actually in our proof hearing of the CC audiobook, we heard how Lord Chaitanya accepted Sanatana Goswami's advice not to go to Vrindavan with such a big crowd. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first started to go to Vrindavan, millions of people literally followed him wherever he went. He couldn't even find a place to sit down, to speak of walk. And yes, so Sanatana Goswami is very, very senior. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu expressed it himself in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the most qualified. So here's what he wrote. It goes like this about the Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastridipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Madmahadana Manistadagamagbhagya Madhananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kada anamuncha gadachin mam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. We reached the 4th chapter, and we're well into it. The part 2 of Brhad Bhagavatamrta. Gopakumar has finally come to Vaikuntha, met Vishnu face to face, but he was still not completely satisfied. And even though sometimes Lord Vishnu would reveal his form as Krishna to him, because he knew what his relationship was, and allowed him to play his flute and entertain him in so many things, he still had a look about his face that he wasn't completely satisfied. Now he's met Narada Muni. Narada Muni can travel anywhere, even to Vaikuntha. And he just pulled Gopakumar aside to speak to him, to find out what's going on with him. And that's where we are. Narada Muni has pulled Gopakumar aside to have us talk with him privately. Text 137 in the 4th chapter of the 2nd part of Brhad Bhagavatamrta. Because of respect and shyness, I couldn't ask him about these matters, but that best of omniscient mystics, the greatest Vaishnava, knew what I was thinking. To give pleasure to my ears and to his own tongue, he, that's Narada Muni, briefly expounded on each of the topics I was contemplating. Sri Narada said, text 139, don't think that the flocks of animals and birds of this place, or the trees, creepers, bushes, grass, and other vegetation, are made from earth like ordinary creatures in the mode of ignorance. Commentary. In Vaikuntha, Gopakumar saw many animals like cows, horses, and elephants, birds like doves and cuckoos, trees, bushes, and creepers like mandaras and kundas, and seemingly inauspicious creatures like insects and worms. He would have been wrong to think that these were inferior living beings, born into bodies covered by the mode of ignorance. They were not degraded like the living beings of the material world that assume bodies made of the element earth. Text 140. In fact, they are all personal associates of Sri Krishna, all with spiritual Satchidananda bodies. They have assumed such forms to taste the ecstasy of serving the Lord in various ways. Commentary. These Vaikuntha-vasis choose to play such roles as animals and birds to increase the variety of Lord Narayana's pleasure, and they also want to share in that pleasure. Thus the birds, trees, bees, and creepers described by Lord Brahma in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when he tells of his own experience of Vaikuntha, are not ordinary creatures like the corresponding species of life in the material world. Text 141. They have assumed forms with colors and shapes similar to those of the Lord they have worshipped as most dear. Commentary. This verse indicates that Vaikuntha devotees who appear in non-human forms, such as those of some animal or plant, have worshipped similar forms of Lord Narayana, who by his expansion appeared in those same species. These devotees, each in his own way, have realized the perfection of Sarupya, having attained forms that look just like those of the Supreme Lord. Text 142. Having each attained sameness with a particular form of the Lord, they have gained the opulences of various kinds of bodies, such as sages, demigods, fish, tortoises, human beings, and mystic seers. Text 143. Some have become hogs, man-lions, or dwarfs, and some have 3 eyes, 4 arms, or 1,000 eyes, like Mahapurusha. Text 144. Some have assumed bodies with thousands of faces, or the features of such deities as the sun, the moon, and the gods of air and fire. Some have 4 arms, or 8, or 12, or more, and various kinds of dress, ornaments, symbols, and other attributes. Commentary. Srimad Bhagavatam 2:9, 11, and 12 describes the residents of Vaikuntha as having appearing similar to the Supreme Lord and having varied bodily colors. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha planets have a glowing sky bluish complexion. Their eyes resemble lotus flowers. Their dress is of yellowish color, and their bodily features are very attractive. They are just the age of growing youths. They all have 4 hands. They are nicely decorated with pearl necklaces, with ornamental medallions, and they all appear effulgent. Some are like coral, diamonds, or white lotus fibers in complexion. On their heads and necks they have garlands, and they wear shining earrings. In texts 144 through 147, Narada depicts in some detail this variety of bodily form, dress, and so on. Some Vaikuntha devotees appear as human beings because of having attained sarupya, likeness in form, with such incarnations as the Lord of Sri Raghunath. Others appear as munis by sarupya, with such incarnations as Sri Kapiladev, or as demigods by sarupya with Manvantara avatars like Lord Satyasena and Lord Vibhu. Others appear as rishis by sarupya with incarnations like Sri Parashuram, or as a fish by sarupya with Lord Matsya, or tortoises with Lord Kurma. Some who worship Shiva and Brahma as representative of the Supreme appear in bodies with 3 eyes or 4 heads. Some appear like Indra with 1,000 eyes, like Anantashesh with 1,000 of heads, or like Surya or other demigods. Vedic scriptures like the Indra Sutras, the mantras glorifying Indra, support such worship of demigods as representatives of the Supreme Lord. In the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we also find demigods like Surya being worshipped as representatives of the Lord in Plakshadweep and the other divisions of the Burloka planetary system. The only means for achieving entrance into Vaikuntha is pure, exclusive love for the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Ordinary demigod worshippers are never eligible to become residents of Vaikuntha, but worshippers who regard Shiva and other demigods as non-different from Lord Vishnu achieve special Vaishnava perfection. As the Vamana Purana and other scriptures describe, those devotees join the exalted associates of the Supreme Lord they worship, either on the respective planets of the demigod representatives of the Lord, or, in some cases, on a Vaikuntha planet, where the devotees are endowed with the special opulences of those demigods. The Vaikuntha Vasis, whose bodies are just like the transcendental body of the Mahapurusha, the first incarnation of Lord Vishnu for material creation, and those who have achieved Swarupya by worshipping him, they have thousands of arms, legs, heads, and other limbs. In text 144, the word Adi and so on occurs twice. The first time, it indicates that some devotees in Vaikuntha assume bodies that resemble those of yet other demigods, like Yamaraj and Aryama, who are material representatives of various personal powers of the Supreme Lord. The second name, Adi, the second time Adi indicates that besides the usual 4 arms, some Vaikuntha devotees have 8 arms, 12 arms, or more. Text 145 and 146. Whoever comes to Vaikuntha realizes the very same service to the lotus feet of Krishna for which he had developed a taste by the end of his material life. And he realizes that service in full detail, with suitable dress, form, and so on, since each mood of devotion is near to the personality of Godhead, and each gives pleasure to the Lord absorbed in it. Commentary. The bodies of some Vaikuntha residents resemble those of sages and other humans, or monkeys, demons, or whatever, but do not resemble any of the human-like or sage-like forms of the Lord, such as Lord Ramachandra or Kapiladev, nor any expansion or incarnation of the Lord accepts in other species. The unusual forms that some Vaikuntha devotees accept are explained in the current 2 verses. While practicing devotional service in their previous material lives, those devotees neared the perfection of love of God, and so began to display symptoms of that perfection. Those devotees varied in their individual moods or rasas, and varied accordingly to the forms of the Lord upon which their devotion focused. And when those devotees achieved Vaikuntha, they brought with them their individual rasas. In each case, no matter how unusual the form of devotion was, it gave pleasure to the Supreme Lord. Because those individual moods pleased the Lord, they were attractive also to the devotees expressing them, who therefore did not want to give them up. When the Supreme Lord so desires, some of his devotees imitate the mundane activities of Indra, Chandra, and other demigods, even in Vaikuntha. After all, everything that exists can be found in Vaikuntha in a purified form. Text 147. In Vaikuntha, each devotee sees the Supreme Lord Sri Narayana in the form of the particular Lord he worships, with suitable complexion and other qualities. Commentary. Lord Narayana has 2 arms and a dark blue complexion, but because devotees are attracted to him in other forms, the Lord's all-powerful personal energies enable devotees to see him in whatever forms they like. Thus, in Vaikuntha, each devotee can cherish the Supreme Lord in his own way. Text 148. The same kind of ecstasy these devotees previously enjoyed in worshipping the Lord, they continue to relish here in Vaikuntha. They obtain it as a unique, uninterrupted, unceasing bliss, newer and newer at every moment. Commentary. The type of devotional ecstasy each new resident of Vaikuntha developed in his last material life continues in Vaikuntha, but on the platform of spiritual perfection. And the ecstasy constantly grows, acquiring newer and newer variety. Text 149 and 150. As before, these devotees still see their own worshipable Lord, with all his unique features they found charming, his same entourage, and everything else. These devotees, each in his favorite mood, constantly hope to serve him. They are indeed the wisest of saints, for they have each attained the final perfection of their own faith. Commentary. Each Vaikuntha-vasis worships a form of the Lord as seen together with that Lord's unique entourage and paraphernalia. Lord Raghunath, for example, is accompanied by his brothers, headed by Lakshman, and by the daughter of Janaka. He also has his bow, his kingdom Ayodhya, and his pastimes, like being exiled to the forests. The devotees of Sri Raghunath are especially attracted to these unique characteristics of the Lord. Those devotees and all the others in Vaikuntha are the best of saints because their faith in the Supreme Lord is unalloyed and unshakable. Text 151. Thus they worship their favorite forms of the Lord in the places where he resides, his opulent cities and other abodes, and expand the ocean of happiness. Commentary. The Vaikuntha kingdom has many confidential areas, including cities like Lord Ramachandra's Ayodhya. Devotees who, while living in the material world, worshipped the Supreme Lord as residing in some particular abode, go to a similar abode in Vaikuntha, where they continue to worship him with entourage and paraphernalia that attracted them. The Almighty Personality of Godhead is present in Vaikuntha as Narayana, seated in his excellent palaces on the best of thrones. But to all of his surrendered devotees, he displays whatever aspects of himself they love with special affection. We should never think that Lord Narayana's display of multiple forms to various devotees is illusory. There is no influence of the illusory material energy in Vaikuntha, and the Lord is capable of doing whatever he wants. The special abodes like Ayodhya that are manifest within Vaikuntha are not separate worlds, but special displays of spiritual variety arranged to expand unlimitedly the Lord's glories and the ecstasy of his devotees. Text 152. Devotees are not exclusively attracted to one form of the Lord. Those whose affection is not focused on a single appearance of his are ready to serve him in any form. Commentary. Some devotees are attracted to all of the Supreme Lord's appearances. Those devotees serve any one form of the Lord of Vaikuntha without any preference as to which. Other devotees are attracted to serving 2, 3, or several particular forms. Text 153. Some devotees dedicated themselves to the 8-syllable mantra or some other mantra for the husband of Lakshmi. And when those devotees left their material bodies, they all obtained the shelter of this Vaikuntha. Commentary. Devotees of Narayana can realize his association by chanting his mantra of 5, 8, or 12 syllables. Sri Parashara Rishi states in the Vishnu Purana 1.6.40, even the moon, sun, and other planets are created and destroyed again and again, but persons who have meditated on the 12-syllable mantra have never had to return until the present day. Since all of Lord Narayana's mantras call upon his holy names, the 12-syllable mantra mentioned here refers indirectly to all the Lord's mantras, not just the mantra of 12 syllables, as effective means for achieving Vaikuntha. Devotees who worship the Lord perfectly with any of his mantras attain his shelter in the next life. And among the sheltered devotees, those who worship the Lord as the supreme controller reach him in Vaikuntha. Text 154. All the devotees in Vaikuntha enjoy the particular happiness for which they aspired, and feel it greater than all others. This creates a hierarchy of tastes, but within it a simultaneous equality. Commentary. Whatever happiness a devotee may have, felt from worshiping the Supreme Lord in the material world, expands without limit when he achieves entrance into Vaikuntha. In other words, even though all devotees in Vaikuntha share the same basic spiritual nature, they feel varieties of pleasure. Different devotees relish various qualities of ecstasy in their hearing, chanting, and worshipping, and the ecstasy of one devotee may be greater than that of another. Still, each devotee in Vaikuntha is satisfied with his own devotional service. Whatever his rasa, when it develops to full maturity, he fully tastes the ecstasy natural to it. This point has already been discussed, and later it will be made even more clear. Text 155 through 157. In the Lord's appearances on earth, he shows similar varieties and equality. The Lord's forms are the shelter and treasure of the earth. Among them are Narayana and Dattatreya and Parashara, the son of Jamadagni, and Kapila. There are those who playfully assume the appearance of deities, and those such as Vishnu and Yajneshwar, whom you have seen on Swargaloka and other higher planets. There are such various incarnations as Matsya, Kurma, Mahavaraha, Sriman Nrsimha, and Vamana. Each of these forms of the Lord has his own activities and names, yet all of them are full in eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Though manifesting variety, in substance they are eternally one. Commentary. Liberated devotees of the Supreme Lord can display varieties of personalities within the basic oneness of spiritual existence, because they are empowered by the Lord, who shares with them his inconceivable ability to be simultaneously one and many. God is one, but he displays himself with infinite variety. He has his original form as Krishna in Goloka, and his expansion as Narayana in Vaikuntha, plus innumerable other expansions in the spiritual and material worlds. Counted among the avatars he displays in the material realm are his deity forms. In different corners of the universe he appears as innumerable deities, each with its own form and personality. Like Sri Shankarshan in Ilavritavarsha, Sri Jagannath in Purushottam Kshetra, and Sri Ranganath in Rangapuri, to mention just a few. In the heavenly planets, he appears in expansions such as Vamana, Vishnu, and Yajneshwar. Throughout the material worlds, he descends in many incarnations, some famous, like Lord Matsya and Lord Kurma, others lesser known, like Lord Hayagriva and Lord Hansa. The activities, names, and forms of these avatars are manifold, but they are all one personality of Godhead, complete in unadulterated eternity, knowledge, and bliss. As stated in the Mahasamhita, there is no difference between any of the incarnations of the Lord, and no difference between his body and his soul. In truth, all the incarnations are all-pervasive and infinitely subtle. Thus plays the Supreme Person Janardhan, making use of his opulent powers. In Badarakashram, Lord Narayan appears with his younger brother, Nara, as the son of Dharma, and acts as guru for the performers of austerity. In text 155, the word Adi, Kapil Adyaha, implies other incarnations, including Vyasadeva and Dhanvantari. And in text 156, the word Adi, Swarga Lokadishu, implies additional appearance places of the Lord on Maharloka, on Satyaloka, and in the universal coverings formed of earth and other elements. In text 156, the second use of the word Adi, Vishnu Yagyeshwaradaya, alludes to Lord Mahapurusha on Brahmaloka, and to the forms of the Lord such as Varaha, worshipped in the coverings of the universe. Gopakumar has seen many of these forms of the Supreme Lord. The form of Sri Vamana, mentioned separately here, is different from the four-armed Lord Vishnu, who was the presiding deity on Swargaloka. As we learn from the Puranas, several incarnations of Lord Vishnu appear more than once, at different times, and under different circumstances. It is known, for example, that Matsya, the greatest of fish, appeared once at the end of his cycle of yugas to save the Vedas during the devastating flood of the universe, and appeared more than once during a partial flood of the lower part of the universe to show his mercy to Satyavrata Muni. There are also two kurmas. One held Mandara mountain on his back while nectar was being churned from the milk ocean, and the other always holds up the earth. Similarly, there are at least 5 Lord Varahas. The first appeared from Brahma's nostril at the beginning of creation, lifted the earth, deposited her on the Garbha ocean, and then disappeared. The second saved the earth from a partial flood of devastation, killed Hiranyaksha, and went to Swargaloka. The third, the embodiment of Vedic sacrifice, taught the methods of sacrifice, lifted the earth, spoke to her the Varaha Purana, and disappeared by his mystic power. The fourth took the earth and made her even by grinding down the excessively large mountains with his sharp tusks. The earth then assumed the form of his consort Varahi, enjoyed with him, and gave birth to 2 sons. That Lord Varaha finally disappeared by merging into the form of Lord Nishinga. And yet a 5th Varaha perpetually holds up the earth from below. Lord Nishinga also made several different appearances, as we know from such sources as the Brihad Sahasranama Stotra. One Nishinga defeated all the celestial mothers, another ripped apart Hiranyakashipu, and yet another assumed the form of an ordinary cat. There were also 2 appearances of Vamanadev to trick 2 different asuras, Dundu and Bali, and there were 2 appearances each of Lord Hayagriva and Lord Hamsa. Text 158. The differences between them should never be seen as illusory, any more than should the plurality of the conditioned souls. Rather, the differences between the Lord's forms are displays of the energies that underlie his spiritual pastimes. The differences are born of the various moods of his various worshippers. Commentary. Someone might argue that only by illusion can a single being appear as many. But the verse at hand explains the truth. As we know from the teachings of Vedanta, the jiva souls are real, and they are factually distinct from the Supreme Soul and from one another. The differences between the individual jivas and the Paramatma, and the differences among the jivas themselves, are not illusions created by Maya. Nor does one jiva appear divided into many souls simply by false designations. Nor does the one supreme truth reflect itself into many small images, jivas who have no real existence of their own. The jivas are real, and their differences are real. In the same way, all the forms of Godhead are real manifestations of His pure spiritual essence, displayed by His personal energies. The personality of Godhead is a vast ocean of many different moods of loving exchanges. His various devotees respond to His various pastimes by developing individual varieties of ecstasy. And the Lord reciprocates with these ecstasies by showing Himself in different ways. His devotees are concerned with Him alone, and therefore, whenever a devotee becomes extremely anxious to see Him in a particular form, the Lord at once shows that form to the devotee. These appearances of the Lord, although apparently ad hoc, are in fact eternal, real, and all-pervading. By displaying His pastime incarnations, the Supreme Lord fulfills the hankerings in the hearts of all pure devotees. Were He to fail to do so, His most significant glory, unlimited kindness to His surrendered servants, would be lost. If any form in which the Lord appears were to prove non-eternal, unreal, or less than all-pervading, the devotees worshipping that form would be disappointed, and great harm would come to their spiritual lives. Therefore, none of the Lord's incarnations allow themselves to be affected by the illusory influence of Maya. Text 159. Before this, variety does not. Therefore, this variety does not arise from the difference between an object and its reflected image, as with the sun reflected in water. Rather, the Lord's forms are like the one sun, standing undivided in the sky, seen everywhere, but in different ways, in different places. Commentary. The variety of the Supreme Lord's appearances cannot be understood by the logic of an object and its reflection, because every one of the Lord's forms is eternal and real. In the object reflection model, the only object that would be eternal and real would be the original, the avatari, the form of the Lord from which all His other forms expand. All the other forms of the Lord would be temporary and unreal, like mere reflections. In effect, the expanded personal forms of the Lord would be products of illusion. The theory of expanding by reflection, therefore, is untenable. The Supreme Person, in all His forms, is the same original object, complete in eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The sun may be reflected in various bodies of water, or any object may be reflected in several mirrors. The one then appears to be many because of its images in various places. But the variety among the Supreme Lord's forms is not like that. For the varieties shown by the Lord, the more fitting analogy cited here is that of one object, the sun, being viewed differently by people in different places. Each person, from where he stands, sees the sun appearing differently against the backdrop of nearby objects, trees, hills, and so on. Similarly, the diverse worshippers of the Supreme Lord see Him with different forms, complexions, and qualities according to their individual ecstatic moods. One devotee sees the Lord as a brilliant sphere of light, another as having 4 arms and a red complexion, and yet another as having 2 arms, holding a pair of lotus flowers. None of these different visions are illusory, because they are perceived by pure devotees, whom the Lord has no reason to deceive. Text 160. The Lord's various forms are one, just as knowledge and happiness, though separated entities, are one, because they are both aspects of the same absolute truth. Commentary. Anyone can understand from experience that since knowledge is the cause of happiness, happiness and knowledge are 2 separate entities. This difference is real, not illusory, because both knowledge and happiness are distinct and real aspects of Brahman, the absolute truth. But then again, due to the very fact that knowledge and happiness belong to the essential nature of the absolute, the 2 are really one. According to the Taittiriya and other Upanishads, Brahman's identity is knowledge and also happiness. And since Brahman is always one, non-dual, its aspects of knowledge and happiness are also essentially one. Demonstrably, knowledge and happiness are one and different and real, because the Absolute Truth is Himself both one and many, and He is real in the variety He exhibits. Thus we read in the Varaha Purana, the Supreme has no material form made of flesh, marrow, and bones. He has His form not by virtue of practicing yoga, but because He is the Absolute Truth, the personal form of the infallible, all-powerful Lord is real. Another Purana, the Varaha Purana, also states, all the bodies of the Supreme Soul are eternal and unchanging. They never undergo loss or gain, and they are never creations of material nature. In all conditions, they are full of the greatest intense bliss and pure consciousness, endowed with all auspicious qualities and devoid of faults. The bodies of the Supreme Lord are free from defects, unsurpassable in excellence, and full in all transcendental qualities. Thus, the Supreme Controller's body and soul are never different from one another. When Scripture records that He accepts bodies and maintains them and gives them up, those arrangements are to be understood as casual and external, just like accepting someone's hand in friendship. Saying that he is different from everyone else does not mean that he is nothing but pure consciousness. By consorting with His exclusive potencies, the Supreme Lord transcends material nature, assumes forms like this one, and in various other ways maintains His unique status. Hare Krishna. The forms of the Lord, analyzed by Narada Muni, the greatest preacher in the universe, from the position of being at Vaikuntha. So it's 8 o'clock, we'll stop here. And if there's any reflections, comments, discussions, please be our guest.
Braj Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Put the microphone, hold the microphone. There you go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai Braja.
All glories to Srila.
First off the blocks today.
Very interesting that a devotee gets the right assets to conduct their preferred service.
Yes.
Question. Does this mean if I want to go to serve Lord Kalki as a warrior, then this will be provided?
Yes.
I'm feeling very eager to go to Krishna more and more.
Yes, this means you're headed in the right direction.
I feel like you're giving us the most confidential data on the spiritual world, and it is not at all disappointing.
Yes. And it's got unlimited variety, and therefore it is never boring. Only a person who is influenced completely by the mode of ignorance would think that they're boring. Sometimes you hear the devotees, or maybe not devotees, but some people who are coming around listening and favorable or whatever, they'll say something like, well, yes, but the Lord pastimes, they repeat themselves again and again. Don't they get boring? But they don't realize that in the spiritual world, there is no time, present, past, present, and future. Everything is now, real. And every time something happens, every time you see someone, it's like you saw them for the first time. All these tourists, they go to all these far out places in the world where there's special configurations of material nature, waterfall or mountain or desert or ocean or whatever. And after a while, they'll stay there for a while, then they'll get bored. And then they'll have to go to another place the next time or whatever. But the Lord's variety and everything as being described here in the spiritual world is ever fresh and ever expanding and therefore ever new and ever interesting. It's inconceivable for us to understand while we're in the modes of nature. But that doesn't mean that it's not true. And therefore, as soon as you start to hear these scriptures with that level of faith, with that depth of faith, with that eagerness, you will see it and experience it just by hearing it. Hare Krishna.
From Gopiparanadhana Devi Dasi.
Yes, Gopakanya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and your daily readings of Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta. From Krishna Primavati Devi Dasi. Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranams, all glories to all the assembled Vaishnavas. A bit off topic maybe, but are there many devotees like Narada Muni who can travel freely throughout all the different lokas?
The number of universes are the same as the number of hair holes or skin holes in the body of Mahavishnu. You can't calculate them. How many pores, how many skin holes are there in your body? You can't calculate them. But imagine in Lord Vishnu and Vishnu's body, you can't calculate. So there are devotees like Narada in every universe. Unlimited. Hare Krishna.
Question.
Wait a second, Shyam Kishore's got a question. Haribo.
I was just wondering, for when you develop attachment to a certain service and then you do it in...
No, it's not attachment to a particular service. It's attachment to a particular form of the Lord. And you're so attached to doing service to that particular form of the Lord, you take a form similar to that form in Vaikuntha.
Oh, so there's nothing to do with the service that you do?
Well, it doesn't, but it does. If that service is done in full love and attachment to a particular form.
Because I was wondering about if you do Sankirtan, but then there's no Sankirtan, is it?
Well, there's not book distribution because everybody there knows everything.
Yeah.
But there are other services in which everyone can
glorify the Lord.
Yeah, glorify and enjoy, glorifying the congregation of the Lord. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we have two more comments. Krishna Primavati Devidasi said, amazing reply, inconceivable. Thank you, Maharaj. Brhad Bhagavatamrta said, Maharaj, what was it like reading this for you the first time? As you said, you were alone in Govardhan.
I can't explain it. I can't explain it in words. It was very blissful and it was ecstatic. And I wanted to share it, but I had no way I could, and I had a deadline to perform, so I couldn't run out and find somebody to read it to. It was very special mercy I got, very mercy of Gopiparanadhana Prabhu. I wouldn't have done it unless Gopiparanadhana would have asked me to do it. And I probably wouldn't have done it if Jadwaita Maharaj wouldn't have agreed to come on the team and do the polish edit. And just as we've been hearing in each one of these purports and verses, the inconceivable part of it is that all of these energies, which are inconceivably great, are inconceivably expanding and continuously expanding forever. Never boredom. Okay, I thank you very much, all of you, and it's coming up to the time we're going to be going up. Shyam Kishore and I are going to be going up to Hereford, to the Chakradaris, Dr. Chandra Rao, who was the initiated disciple of Radhanath Maharaj and happens to be one of the best surgeons in the country. So I'll be going up there to not just to paying him a visit, but to be his patient. So, Hare Krishna. Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta-vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. See you tomorrow night. Same time, same place, same topic, but it's ever expanding. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow.